And we are back on the build phase. I'm Mr. Ben, and today this is just going to be a big housekeeping episode. So I have attempted a couple of times last week to record this segment as an intro to a show that I'm going to do about the boys, and it just got sprawling, so I'm just going to do it as its own thing. So today I'm not going to be specifically addressing versus cards, but I'm going to be talking about the show and kind of my philosophy and how I move through the world. And hopefully that will provide some clarity as to how it is that I think about things. So just to give people a heads up, if you're here for that juicy boys content, that's going to be next episode. So to begin, I am very much aware. I've been made aware throughout my whole life that I think about the world and I move through the world in a different way than a lot of the other people around me. Playing games like Apples to Apples always is an isolating and lonely experience. Nobody gets my jokes. I have sort of a core philosophy that to me is obvious and simple, and yet I'm surprised at how frequently people roll their eyes when I talk about this. I have been accused many times with some permutation of the phrase you always think you're right. Well, yeah, literally everyone thinks they're right, other than liars. And so, I understand that dishonesty and deceit exists within the world, but let's set those things aside for a minute and let's just talk about people who are saying what they think, people who aren't lying, people who are being honest. I can be honest and disagree with you, and you can be honest and disagree with me. By definition, though, we are both saying the thing that we think is correct. We are both attempting to make mouth sounds that hew as closely as possible to reality, to accurate information. And if you're not doing that, well, then you're a liar, or you're dishonest, or you're motivated by something other than getting to the truth, something other than being correct. I'm going to draw a distinction in the show between two things that sound very similar, which is being right and being correct. The distinction I draw between those terms is correct is about accuracy. It's about having information that has the closest fidelity to reality as possible, whereas being right is about winning the argument. It's about the other person being wrong and that being your victory. I don't care at all, not even an iota, about being right. I care deeply about being correct. The promise that I make on this show and in all my creative endeavors is that I'm going to be honest, I'm going to be open, and I'm going to do everything I can to be accurate. But I'm not going to succeed. I'm not going to make it there. So if you're coming to this show expecting that you're never going to hear incorrect information, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know how you became misled. I don't know who these people are that move through life that think anybody is always right, that anybody is always correct. I am not always correct. But the thing is, I don't tie my identity to the most accurate information, at least not in any kind of fixed or static way. So the philosophy that I live by is be right. Always choose to be right. And step 2 of this philosophy is if you ever encounter information that proves that you're wrong, then step 3 is change your mind. Now you are right again. So yes, when people say to me, oh, you think you're always right. Yes, of course I do. And so do you. We all do. We all only, except for liars, we all only make mouth sounds that conform to what we think is right and accurate and true about the world, except for liars. That's what I'm going to do on this show. There is no promise of me being perfect. That is ridiculous. And while I do understand that for a lot of people, tying their name to particular data points or particular outcomes can touch on ego, that's just not the case for me. My ego is not wrapped up in whether a particular ruling in any game that I play goes one way or the other. I'm going to always endeavor to look at the available information and answer any rules questions with the most fidelity to reality that I can. But of course, another thing I have absolutely never said is that my opinion is more valuable or more important than somebody else. Of course, I only have my opinion. I only have the thoughts that I have, and that is my only way of engaging with the world. And in this context of this show, engaging with games. So if somebody has a rules question and I am answering from the position of, hey, here's what I think is right. Here's the reason I think that's right. Go ask a TO. Ask the judge at your event. When I play with people competitively, if there's a rules question, even if I'm 100% sure I have the correct information, I encourage my opponent to go get a judge because I think that's the right thing to do. Recently being accused of thinking that my opinion is incapable of being wrong, for someone to make that accusation against me, you're just not paying attention. That's just all it comes down to. That's disrespectful of my entire project, and it's not paying attention to anything that I've ever said or done. I absolutely am not infallible. In fact, unlike a lot of people, I am willing to be wrong in public. I am willing to put my money where my mouth is and make predictions and make calls and say things out loud that sometimes later are proven to be wrong. And then people get to make fun of me for that. And that's fine. I don't care. Because the service I'm trying to provide to this community or any gaming community that I engage in is being honestly open to the best of my ability with the best information I have available. That's always what I'm trying to do. Does that mean my opinion's better than yours? Well, no. Okay, well, let's get into some opinions that I actually think aren't worth my time. If we engage in a conversation about a rule mechanic, and at any point you feel the need to go, well, more people agree with me than agree with you, you are no longer engaging in the discussion. You are now playing games with words. I don't care how many people agree or disagree with me, because that is not evidence. That has literally nothing to do with how a game is played. There are times where lots of people in a player base about a game play a rule wrong, and there's times where I have stood with the crowd. There's times where I've stood against the crowd, and I've been right and wrong in both of those situations. I don't care. I don't care. I mean, I care about being correct. I care about getting the right information into my head, and then from that point forward, being correct. So when somebody proves to me that I'm wrong about something, that person has done me a favor. Had a really hard time with that when I was a kid, because I would attempt to correct my classmates and say, hey, you got that wrong. And people don't appreciate that. People get mad about that, which is a concept that I don't understand. It's a concept my son doesn't understand. And both of us have had many challenges socially because I'm fine with being corrected. Please correct me. If I'm being wrong in public, the only way to make me a better person is to get me the correct information, and then I can turn around and be right. And that's where I want to be, is correct. But in the situations where we don't have conclusive proof, where we don't have that ruling, what I am always going to do is look at the available evidence. I'm going to come to my opinion, and then I'm going to say what that opinion is, and then I'm going to say, but go get a ruling, because I don't know what the intent of the card was. I don't know how the designers expect this to play. I have never, ever, under any circumstances, told somebody that I'm right and you should only listen to me. That's ridiculous. I have never based my arguments on the number of people who agree with me, because that is similarly ridiculous. While I do think everybody's entitled to their opinion, and nobody's opinion is necessarily more valuable than anybody else's, I do think there are people who work harder for their opinions than others. And if the way you're coming to your opinion is, well, lots of people think that way, that's not a great way to come to your opinion. If the way you're coming to your opinion, or the way you're trying to push me off of my opinion, maybe more accurately, is to play silly word games, if I say the sentence A is similar to B, and you react and attempt to accuse me of saying that A is the same as B, you're not engaging with the argument. You're playing a word game to try to dunk on me because you're right and I'm wrong. Again, I don't care about being right or wrong. I care about being correct. And even if ultimately the issue at hand, the facts of the matter, prove that I'm incorrect, you're not correct by way of playing word games. Pretending you don't understand the difference between two things being similar and two things being the same is not a good argument. It's not an argument at all. It's just a word game. Accusing me of not having played the game as long as some other people, that's just an ad hominem. Again, so if somebody's going to argue against me, or let me rephrase that, if somebody's going to disagree with me about a ruling, and the way they try to support their side of the case is to personally attack me, to try to name call me and denigrate me as a person, I'm going to call out those tactics. I'm going to say, hey, you're not engaging with the argument. Like, you're being disrespectful. You're being rude. And sometimes I might match that energy, which is admittedly childish and infantile of me. Even if somebody's being disrespectful of me, I should still maintain respect and point out the areas where they are being disrespectful without reducing myself to the same level of name calling and being disrespectful. But hey, I'm human, so in the same way that I can sometimes be incorrect about something until the point where I get better information and then I change my mind, I can also sometimes slip up and say things that hurt people's feelings. And the thing that I do when I hurt somebody's feelings, even if I think that person is still wrong, even if I think that person is still being disrespectful and rude, even if that person is still name-calling and behaving poorly towards me, if I say something and I hurt somebody's feelings, I'll apologize for it. I'll say, I shouldn't use those words. Because at the end of the day, what I want to get to is truth. I want to get to whatever the facts of the matter are, and I don't really care about the noise of how many people believe something. All of the there's many, many more ways to be wrong in this world than there are to be right. And at the end of the day, I want to converge on being correct. And that's always going to be what I'm trying to do. I will always try to be honest, open, and as correct as I possibly can. And when it happens, and it will happen again, that I say something inaccurate, or that I read a card and I go, oh, well, this obviously, to me, this is obviously how this works. Sometimes I'm going to be wrong. Even when I do card reviews and I say, oh, well, here's how I think this works, but we're going to need to check with the people for... I am never going to tell somebody not to check with the TO. I'm never going to tell somebody not to check with the designers for intent. Because, again, I care more about being correct than I do about my opinions being right. My ego is not tied to my knee-jerk reaction to a card is not going to make me feel good or bad about myself. Doing this job, engaging with this podcast poorly, would make me feel bad about myself. Engaging with the community poorly would make me feel bad about myself. Because what I want to do is get people excited about the game. I want to say what I think. Sometimes people agree with me. Sometimes people will disagree with me so hard that they don't like me anymore. And you know what? That's fine. That's actually okay. Not everybody has to like me. Not everybody has to like my approach. Not everybody has to like the way I use words or language or engage with other people. That's okay. I will still attempt always to treat other people with respect. And when it happens that I make somebody feel disrespected, I'm going to apologize for that, because that's how adults should behave. And that's the kind of person I want to be. When I'm wrong, like when I hurt somebody's feelings or when I get a ruling wrong, I'm always going to go back and correct the record. And if that makes you think less of me, the idea that I could read a card preview and not immediately know the designer intent and say the exact right words to describe how the effect works, if that makes you feel like I'm less valuable or that the show is less valuable, then okay, this isn't the show for you. If the show you want is one where people are never wrong, I honestly don't know anywhere to direct you to, because every show is made by people and we all always get something wrong some of the time. So I can't promise 100% perfection as far as accuracy or even execution. Like, I'll say my goals, I'm about to, but sometimes I'm going to fall short of them. What I can promise is that I will always try to, at all times, deliver the best, most accurate information, but it's going to be run through the filter of my perspective, my perception, what I think about the world. So the best, most accurate information that is objectively right for me, might not be perfect for you. And I have always encouraged people to think about the things that I do with that degree of humility, because that's how I think about the things that I do. I'm in no position to dictate to anyone else what's going to be perfect for them, what the right deck is for them, what the right play mechanics, what they should think about cards. Now, I enjoy arguing about cards. I think it's a lot of fun when I think a card is bad and somebody else thinks the card's good, and we can kind of go round and round and debate it. I think that's fun as long as the conversation is about the cards. As soon as the conversation shifts into silly word games or attacking somebody personally or name calling or any of these other logical fallacies that have nothing to do with actually talking about cards, where it's just trying to make the other person look like discredit or dismiss what they have to say rather than engaging with their arguments, I think those conversations are a complete waste of time. And, I guess if that's the way somebody wants to engage, with the world, and that's the way they want to talk and debate, I guess that's fine, actually. The world is big enough for all different types of people, but I'm not terribly interested in having disrespectful conversations that don't have anything to do with the topic at hand. That's not interesting to me. When I find myself in those conversations, I generally try to, well, I would like to say I generally try to bow out quickly, but that's not actually true. I generally try to bridge the divide, and sometimes that works, and sometimes it blows up in my face catastrophically. Sometimes somebody just wants to be mad, and no matter how many times you go, hey, I'm sorry I said something that hurt your feelings, they're just going to keep being mad, and there's nothing I can do about that. There's nothing I can do about the fact that my personality irritates some significant percentage of people. I am very aware of this. I've been made aware of this throughout my whole life. Yes, this show and the way I move through the world, if you think it's wrong, if you think the things I'm doing and the way I'm behaving are embarrassing or silly or cringe, or you think I'm stupid, God bless. You are more than entitled to think any negative thing about me that you want to. That's fine. None of that stuff has anything to do with how any particular game mechanic works. So the way I'm going to approach this show and my engagement with the community is essentially unchanged. I'm going to continue to try to be as kind as possible. When I make mistakes, I will apologize for it. I will correct the record. And anytime it's brought to my attention that I was wrong about something, and I am still going to practice this approach of being as radically honest as I can about everything that I think. And I hope that as an audience, everybody's aware that I am talking about my perspective. I am an expert on my perspective, if nothing else. So I'm going to continue talking as if what makes sense to me and is obvious to me. I don't know any other way to be. If that's the show for you, that's awesome. I'll see you next episode when we talk about the boys. And if this isn't the show for you, you know, that's awesome too. Go check out Bert, Team Apex, Recover Ready, the Plot Twisters. There's a lot of different people in the Versus community. And if what I'm creating doesn't make you, it doesn't engage you, it's not hitting the notes that you want your Versus content to hit, that's okay. God bless. There's plenty of room for all of us in this community. And all I can do is be the person that I am. And some people might like it, some people might not, and that's okay. Till next time, go win some games.